Redline logbook here for D-Gray Man's The Rewind Town arc. This arc starts off with a woman that looks like a skeleton, currently being choked out by an Akuma, wondering why isn't today? Asking herself what's supposed to happen next is that she's supposed to have water splash on her, and then she goes to bed. That's what's supposed to happen today, because today is today. It's always today. This monster, the Akuma, is something new. What's changed? Alan then walks up, and of course does his duty, and saves the woman from the Akuma, and also frees the Akuma's soul. As for the woman, she just runs away, because why wouldn't she? Funny enough, because Alan is also not supposed to be there, she's actually happy when she runs away, and she assumes that she's escaped from today. And what does that mean? Well, she then looks at a newspaper and she reads that it is in fact still October 9th, which means today is today, not tomorrow. She looks at her grandfather clock, sees the time, and then starts counting down. And when she hits to 1, she then sticks her head out the window and she sees a woman, her neighbor, strangling her husband, screaming about him having an affair. And she realizes, no, today is still today. This poor woman has repeated October 9th for 30 straight days. She then gets all depressed again and is able to calm her nerves by cleaning the grandfather clock. After this, she then goes outside to start the day over again. While she's walking outside, a child throws dog poo at her. She dodges it. The child gets mad for her dodging the dog poo. She then points out that, of course, she's going to dodge it after 30 times, and the kid says that this is the first time I've ever thrown dog poo at you. And then they start mocking her. First off, we learn her name is Miranda because the kids have their own nursery rhyme about her. I'll just say the nursery rhyme. Miranda, unlucky Miranda, dark, scary, and gloomy, looking for a job today, but she'll get fired anyway. Of course, she gets mad at this, and obviously, this is probably the worst fucking town ever. It is basically revealed that this woman is hated by literally everyone in this town, all because she's a klutz. I'm not joking. She then sees Alan walking through the crowd of people, and that's when she realizes it's the guy from yesterday who killed the monster. He's different. For the first time, something different is happening, and so she decides to follow behind him and see where he's going. Alan goes to a diner where he meets up with Lena Lee. We learn something pretty interesting. Alan doesn't just eat a lot of food, he's also a terrible artist. He draws Miranda, but he makes her look like some kind of monster. I will acknowledge she does look like a kind of a skeleton, but that picture just is not flattering at all. So they start discussing the town. Everything that Kamui told them about it is apparently accurate. 1, the town is completely repeating the same day over and over, October 9th. And 2, anytime they try to leave the city, they immediately teleport back into it. They are currently trapped inside the city now. In fact, this is something that Kamui predicted was probably going to happen. So we end up with a flashback where this is maybe being caused by innocence, and used the word maybe like 40 times. He wants to very stretch out the fact that they're not entirely sure. And the reason why they're not entirely sure is because no one can get into the city. You see, this was first discovered when a man outside of the city was given an order to deliver alcohol to a certain bar before the 10th. So the man shows up the next day with the alcohol, but every time he tries to enter the gate, he of course teleports on the outside of the gate. And he was unable to contact the people inside, so he just gave up. But the next day, at the exact same time, the same order was called in. And this kept happening over and over and over again every single day at the exact same time. And so that's when the searchers realized this is most likely a paranormal event being caused by innocence. So the searchers tried to go in, but they couldn't get in. So the Black Order came to the conclusion that this is most likely caused by innocence, and the only people who can get in are people who have innocence, aka exorcists. Now obviously Lena was already supposed to go, but Kamui was concerned that sending her by herself would be dangerous, and since she can't be sent in with any searchers, he decided to assign Alan along with her. Alan points out that Kamui was acting kind of weird, kind of stressed out and tired, and Lena's response is, well, he's been worried about something. For some reason, the Millennium Earl hasn't been spotted in a while, and he seems to be inactive as well. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. Basically, the Black Order's beginning to realize the Millennium Earl is starting his plan. That's when Alan notices Miranda spying on them, which wasn't very hard because she decided to get real close to hearing on their conversation, and she then immediately jumps out a window. Alan catches her, of course, but still, damn, she can move. Miranda then finally tells them their story and starts crying, explaining how she tried telling this to other people, but none of them would believe her. She starts freaking out. She then starts to beg Alan to save her, like he did from the monster. Alan was also getting creeped out at the moment because Miranda's a little overboard, but you gotta understand, this woman's been trapped for 30 days. A month of doing the same day over and over again, yeah. I completely empathize with her and the fact that she's going nuts. That is when Alan's cursed eye activates, and he sees that 3 of the customers in the restaurant are actually Akumas. He orders Lena Lee to grab Miranda and get the hell out of there while he holds them off. This is actually pretty good because the Akuma were about to transform, and all 3 of them were level 2s, so there's no way that Lena Lee and Alan would have been able to protect Miranda. A cursed eye of his is really useful, that's for sure. Outside of the town, the gray-skinned girl, that was with the Millennium Earl, decides to force her way through the barrier of the city. And when I say force her way through, I mean it literally rips apart her flesh, but of course she regenerates. Her name is Rhode Camelot. And right now she doesn't actually have gray skin, she has white skin, and those scars on her head are also gone. Alan is currently fighting the 3 Akumas. Because they're all level 2s, they all have special abilities. One has a sonic scream that stuns Alan. A second one has wind slash abilities that Alan can barely dodge after being stunned by the noise. And the third one releases what it calls Ice Fire, which is ice so cold that it burns hotter than fire. The 3 of them are actually having all the fun in the world attacking Alan, and each one then declares that they're going to be the one to kill him. But the Akumas don't want to share, so they just started a game of rock, paper, scissors over who gets to kill Alan. Also, not joking about this, Alan, realizing how stupid this is, starts shooting his gun at them. They get pissed off that he would interrupt their rock, paper, scissors game, and all 3 go fully ballistic on Alan at this point, ignoring the rock, paper, scissors altogether and deciding whoever kills him, kills him. But, before they get a chance to, Rhode, then, I guess through a psychic link, orders them to come to her. Alan, obviously not being able to hear Rhode's voice, is confused by what just happened, but a win's a win at the moment. Back with Lena Lee, they're in Miranda's house, and she is currently freaking out again. Once again, can't blame her, but at the same time, this is getting old. She ends up dropping a key from around her neck. It's the key to the grandfather clock, and she's extremely protective of it. So the reason why she's so protective about this key and the grandfather clock in general is because her entire life she was basically alone and rejected by everyone because of the fact that she was constantly clumsy and just screwing up everything. When she was a child, she brought down the mood, and so the kids didn't like her and she had no friends. And as an adult, she basically spent her life getting fired from job after she broke something or destroyed something at work, all by accident. I actually get to see her face, and she doesn't look like a skeleton. She looks like a normal woman, which means the stress of constantly failing and being fired and just being rejected by society slowly sucked the life out of her. One day, she was at an antique shop where the owner was about to throw away the grandfather clock. The reason being is because it can't be fixed. No matter what anyone did or tried, they couldn't get it to work. In fact, even the key couldn't turn, no matter how many times he tried to fix the gears in it. Ian gives Miranda the key, says, "Hey, go ahead and give yourself a try. You'll see what I mean." The thing is, when Miranda turned the key of the clock, it turned on and started clicking. And the thing is, Miranda actually felt a kinship with this clock. The reason being, this clock was also seen as worthless and useless, and it was thrown away by society. So she decided to buy the clock, take it home, and restore it the best she could. And it basically became the nicest thing in her life. After Alan returns to Miranda's place, then they all start to discuss on what could be happening. They all point out to Miranda, because she's the only one who's unaffected by the rewinding of the day, then she must be connected to the innocents in some way. And Alan then asks her for her help. And before she can give her answer, she then stands up, all awkward-like, walks over to her bed, goes to sleep, and then all you see is the entire town's time being dragged into the grandfather clock. So the innocence in the grandfather clock, that's obvious. But the way the power works isn't that it reverses time. No. What it does is that it absorbs the time of the town into itself. And so that's why we end up with the same day over and over again. Because it isn't time travel, it's time absorption. The only people unaffected, of course, are Miranda, Alan, and Lena Lee. And unfortunately, Rhode and the Akuma are also unaffected. And that's where we find Rhode observing the rewinding of the town while she's currently torturing the Sound Akuma by clawing at its flesh, causing it to bleed. She then tells the Akumas that they're going to leave the Exorcist alone, at least until they are able to find the Innocents. Once they locate the Innocents, then they're going to go in, get the Innocents, and kill the Exorcist. Now they know that the Innocents is in the grandfather clock, they decide to examine it. And apparently, the only person who can touch it is Miranda, because Alan is literally able to just walk through it. He even puts himself inside of it, poking out only his arms and head, just because it was fun to do that. Miranda then pulls a knife on Alan, because if the Innocents inside her clock, that means they would have to destroy the clock to get to the Innocents. And she doesn't want that. She likes her clock. It's her only friend, after all. And we finally get the explanation of why the clock did what it did. Okay, so Miranda came home after being fired from her 100 job. And because she just got fired 100 straight times, she decided to get drunk. Super drunk. And while lying against the clock, she then says she wishes tomorrow would never come. The Innocents then resonated with her and fulfilled her wish. Lily then points out that the only way innocence can resonate with someone is if that person is an exorcist, which means Miranda is an exorcist. Alan is kind of disturbed because this woman is kind of crazy, but Lily seems nice enough to go, "Hey, welcome to the family." But since she is an exorcist and this is her innocence, that means she should be able to control it. And so they ask her to try to control the innocence. So Miranda then asks the clock to turn time back to where it should be, and it doesn't work. And so we skip ahead 3 days into the future, where both Miranda and Alan are currently working as ticket sales for a play that's about to start called The Pumpkin and the Witch. The reason why they're doing this is because they're trying to fulfill Miranda's wish of getting a job and keeping said job, hoping that would be the thing that releases this town from the innocents. And it has not been working. In the last 3 days, which has been the same day over and over, they have tried out for 5 jobs and have been fired every single time. While they're resting, Lena Lee then tells Alan that he's actually pretty good doing stunts in the street. And Alan says, well, yeah, I was raised by a clown. My foster father basically was part of a circus. So Alan learned acrobatics at a young age. This impresses Lena Lee because that means Alan probably went all over, country to country as a clown. But Alan then said, well, yeah, I got to do that, but we didn't really make a lot of... Alan then asked Lena Lee about her life. What did she do before she was an exorcist? And apparently, Lena Lee doesn't remember being anything but an exorcist. So while she was very young, her parents were killed by Akuma because they were trying to get to her black boots. That's when the Black Order showed up and took Lena Lee away from her brother, her only living relative. The reason why they did this is because they had to protect the innocents and also keep Lena Lee protected as well because she was now an exorcist, which means she was an important soldier for the war. Lena Lee then spent the next 3 years basically tied to a bed and forced to obey the Black Order and go along with whatever they demanded of her as an exorcist. But her brother, Kamui, great man, he then dedicated those last 3 years to becoming a researcher that the Order would accept, and he finally worked his way up to the point where he could actually be with his sister. So while Kamui may seem obsessive about Lena Lee, the fact is, he had to be. If he didn't dedicate his entire life to the Order, then he would have left Lena Lee alone. Rogue then appears. She then asked Alan, because he's wearing the pumpkin head, if he's the guy selling the tickets. He then stands back up and says, oh, I gotta go back to my job. Unfortunately, since he doesn't know who Rogue is, his plan is just to get her a couple of tickets from the show's owner. But while that's happening, the owner then fires Miranda. And why does Miranda get fired again? Because someone ran by and stole all the money from the sold tickets. And because Miranda just let it happen, of course not her fault, but because she let it happen, the owner decided to fire Miranda. Of course, Alan and Lena Lee still believe that if getting Miranda a job is going to end all this, so they decide the best course of action is to catch the thief, and they run after him. The show's owner then calls Miranda useless and walks away, which then leaves Miranda in the middle of the road crying, asking, why is this her life? Why is that clock innocence? Why is she? And she's about to say useless. Before she can say it, it's when Rode kneels down and says, oh, so the innocence is in the clock. As for the pickpocket, Lena Lee and Alan catch up to him, but obviously he's one of the Akuma. In the meantime, Rogue takes both Miranda and the clock, and what she does with her is quite sick. Where we're at, I can only describe as a twisted dollhouse, where there are toys everywhere, floating candles and such, and currently Rogue is wearing a exorcist cloak, speaking to the umbrella that she stole from the Earl, Rollo, telling it to shut up because it's complaining that she skipped school. It's a weird conversation, but that's not important. The important part is that currently Miranda is there, and her hand has been nailed to the clock. And when I say nailed to the clock, I mean a spike, a railroad-sized spike, was shoved through Miranda's hand into the clock, pinning her to it. And all this poor woman can do is just beg to be let go. But Rode doesn't care. Alan, Lee, and Lee are now fighting with the 3 Akumas, but so far they seem to be evenly matched, where the Akumas will attack with their sound, wind, and ice abilities, and in turn, Alan and Lena Lee will use their exorcist weapons to fight back. At a certain point, the wind Akuma ends up having a duel with Lena Lee, because her dark boots are able to counter the wind, and Alan then takes on the other 2, the sound and the ice. And at first, Alan does really well. Like, he's able to use his claw hand to rip through both of them, and they are bloody, so he did a lot of damage. But unfortunately, working together, these 2 Akuma have the perfect teamwork, because the sound Akuma stuns Alan just long enough for the ice Akuma to freeze Alan's legs. And now that his legs have been frozen, both the ice and the sound guy hit Alan at the exact same time with an even bigger attack. This takes out Alan, and the 3 Akumas then gang up on Lena Lee. The next thing we see is Alan waking up, and he's in this twisted dollhouse himself. And currently, his anti-Akuma weapon arm is being nailed to the wall, just like Miranda's hands were nailed to a clock. The first thing Alan sees is, of course, Miranda. He freaks out, tries to get to her, but his arm can't move because it's currently being nailed down. And the second thing he sees is Rode, currently dressing Lena Lee up in some kind of black dress. And she refers to Lena Lee as her new doll, which means she plans on doing probably even more horrific things to her than she already has done to Miranda. Alan then recognizes her as the girl who asked for the ticket earlier, and then he realizes she has no Akuma soul, so why is she working with the Akuma? Who is she? What is she? And her answer is, I'm human. And she says it with the most evil smile you can imagine. Alan, of course, thinks that's ridiculous because Akuma are weapons meant to kill humans. Why would a human be working with an Akuma? And Rogue's response is, humans kill other humans with weapons all the time. That's all she's doing. And then she reveals her true face, where she ends up getting her gray skin and also those scars on her head. And these scars are actual open wounds. They bleed sometimes. In fact, they're meant to resemble two things. One, a cross, and two, the scars across Jesus' head when the thorn crown is placed upon it. And when she reveals her true face, she then explains that they are the true apostles of God, and the exorcists are false apostles from a false God. They are the Noah family, the true apostles of the true God. Hearing this kind of breaks Alan's mind because she's a human, an honest-to-God human who uses Akuma to kill other humans. This makes no sense to him whatsoever. And before his brain can even process it, that's when Rollo interrupts, screaming at Rogue for revealing secrets to an outsider. This is weird because the Black Order higher-ups already know that Noah exists, so this doesn't even make sense why Rollo's mad. And two, Rogue does not care whatsoever if she tells Alan a few secrets of theirs, because this won't affect the story, and she puts emphasis on the word story, and Millennium Earl's script will go forward as planned. At this point, Alan loses his cool and frees his arm by ripping his arm through the stake. Rogue then walks over to Alan, starts to tease him, saying, "Why are you mad? Because you can't believe that we're human." She then hugs him and says, "Isn't this the warmth of a human? Don't you recognize it?" Alan then goes to attack her, but he does recognize it's the warmth of another human. He knows she's a human. He can see it. He can feel it. And so he stops himself and then asks her, "How can you do this if we're the same?" Rogue's face then contorts again. She laughs at the comment that they're the same, and then uses Alan's claw hand to rip off her own face. And then slowly, her face regenerates back to normal like it did before. And she said, "We're not the same. I'm what you'd call superhuman," because she inherited the genes of Noah, mankind's first apostle. And then she takes one of those spikes and shoves it through Alan's eye, the cursed one. She then tells Alan she actually hates these so-called humans who are inferior to her in every way, and she wishes for them all to be destroyed. In fact, that's what God wishes for as well. They're just doing God's work. Alan then says, "No, that's the work of the devil." And Rogue's response is, she doesn't care which one she serves, as long as she gets to destroy the world. Before Alan can do anything, the three Akumas then beat his ass down again. He's already basically on the verge of dying at this point. He has no way of winning this fight. And so, Rogue decides just to end everything, starting with Miranda. She then takes her floating candlesticks, which are sharp at the end, so they're also basically railroad spikes, launches them at Miranda, but luckily for her, Alan uses his own body as a shield. He takes the full blunt of all of these blades. Alan then rips out the spikes that are pinning Miranda and tells her everything's going to be alright before he completely passes out. Miranda then uses her own body as a shield at this point to protect Alan. The only issue is this ain't going to help at all. She starts to cry, basically realizes there's nothing she can do, there's nothing anyone can do. But her greatest wish right now is to save Alan, and that is when the Innocence activates. It creates this dome around the two of them, and all of Alan's injuries are sucked into the clock. And at this point, Miranda's hair falls down, it becomes natural looking instead of thin and wispy, and she no longer looks like a skeleton. Her face is full and full of life, which means she's finally found her purpose in life. This is the moment that she's basically waited for her entire life. The Akuma then try to pound through the time barrier, but they can't get through it. Alan then thanks Miranda, saving him, launches his arm out, cuts off the arm of the Ice Akuma, goes straight for Rogue. She jumps out of the way. But Alan wasn't aiming for Rogue. He was aiming for the chair that Lena Lee is currently sitting in, grabs it, drags Lena Lee in. Now, Lena Lee is semi-conscious at the moment, but the Sound Akuma basically fried her head with one of its sonic attacks. But because now that she's inside of the dome, the time reversal happens and the damage she took is taken out of her. Lena Lee then asks what's going on, as she's finally fully conscious. Alan then explains that Miranda saved them. And at that moment, Miranda finally realizes she did something useful. She wasn't a worthless person. She helped people, which is the one and only thing she's ever wanted in life, to not be useless. And at this moment when it counted most, she was helpful. And so the counterattack happens. Lena Lee goes first. We actually get to see what her dark boots can do other than kick really hard and move really fast. She's able to produce tornadoes. So at first she blows all the Akumas in different directions. So this way Alan can then get a close range in attack and destroy the Sound Akuma, which is the biggest threat. Rogue then realizes that Miranda was actually compatible with Innocence the entire time. The fact that she didn't realize that is kind of odd to me, but anyway, she now realizes that Miranda has the ability to basically heal wounds, which is problematic, obviously, for her. As for Miranda, she's currently sweating extremely hard and her body is shaking, revealing that using her innocence takes a toll on her. Lena Lee then asked if Rogue is a Akuma, and Alan says no, she's human. And that's when Lena Lee says, I see, which means she was expecting this, because like I said, most people in the Black Order already know what a Noah is. Rogue then spells out Alan's name and then comes to the realization that he is the exorcist who can see Akuma souls. She then gives Alan a really sweet smile, but don't get it twisted. She's smiling so kindly because she knows he's the one exorcist she can mess with now. Because Alan can see Akuma souls, he pities them, and Alan wishes to save all of them. And so Rogue then orders the Ice Akuma to self-destruct. She orders Rollo to do a countdown from 10, and he slowly does it. The Akuma then starts begging for its life, and that's when Rogue explains to Alan that if an Akuma dies other than by innocence, the soul of the Akuma doesn't ascend to heaven. Instead, it's erased forever. Alan, realizing the worst possible situation, then charges forward to exorcise the Akuma. Lena Lee stops him because it's about to explode and she doesn't want him to die. The Akuma then explodes, and Alan has to witness as the soul of the Akuma is obliterated into nothingness. The soul of the person even begs for help. Alan then screams at Lena Lee for stopping him, and Lena Lee, her expression is surprised, because once again, Alan is the only one who can see the souls of an Akuma, and so he's the only one who understands this. Every other exorcist only sees a monster that tries to kill them and kill other people. So if one just self-destructs and dies, who cares? It doesn't matter. They just don't understand why Alan would risk his life for an Akuma. And so Lena Lee slaps Alan and says, I did it because we're friends. Because in her eyes, he was the one who needed to be saved, not the Akuma. Rogue then starts to laugh, saying Alan running head first into an explosion is hilarious, and that he's going to be way more entertaining than she actually thought he would be. Alan's about to attack Rogue when she points over to Miranda, who is currently being attacked by the Wind Akuma. The Wind Akuma shoots off its blades, and that's when Alan uses his gun to block all of them, and then Lena Lee finishes off by cutting it in half with her boots. Since Rogue is out of Akuma, she decides that it's done. The game is over. She produces a door and starts to walk towards it. Alan puts his gun to her head. Alan wants to kill her so badly for what she did to that Akuma, to the soul of that person. And the only response Rogue has is to laugh at Alan and basically say that he's too nice. An exorcist that cares about Akuma is a no-no. And that if he keeps doing that, everyone will hate him. Alan, of course, lowers his gun because he can't kill a human. And Rogue just walks through her door and tells him that the two of them are going to play again. As soon as the door closes, the Twisted Dollhouse begins to shatter, literally, fall apart. Alan then tries to get to Lena Lee and Miranda, but they all begin to fall. And then, nothing. They just appear inside Miranda's home. They didn't actually fall or anything. That world, that Twisted Dollhouse, was just her ability. That's when Lena Lee starts calling for Alan, and he shows up, see Miranda shaking, sweating, and just in a lot of pain. And the reason is because she refuses to undo her powers. And they ask her, why aren't you doing that? And Miranda points out to them what happens when she begins to lose grip on her power. All that time that was absorbed from them begins to flow back to Alan and Lena Lee, which means she can't permanently take away time. Once she lets go, all that absorbed time is going to go back to them, and every single one of their injuries are going to return. Miranda then says she's finally been thanked in her life for the first time, and it all is meaningless if they die, so she's going to do everything in her power to not let that happen. They then tell her it's fine. As long as they can bear their own injuries, they'll live. It'll be okay. So she releases it. All of their injuries return. She then immediately runs to the closest doctor and begs for help. And as Alan begins to lose consciousness from his injuries, he then finishes what he was saying before, which is, if he survives, he'll heal, but the scars will remain. And yes, physical scars will remain, but he's mostly talking about the mental and emotional scars now that he knows about Rogue and the fact that Akuma's souls can be obliterated. When Alan wakes up, Kamui is there. He apparently was the one who did the surgery to fix Alan up. Yeah, so a searcher was right outside the city, and as soon as he realized time was moving forward again, he then immediately called the Black Order, who then immediately sent in the team to see what happened. And they discovered Alan and Lena Lee, and of course, they immediately gave them medical treatment. Lena Lee is unfortunately still unconscious, but Kamui says she'll be fine because she's currently being treated. And that's when another character is introduced, Robbie. He's a boy around Alan's age with an eye patch, and he was also waiting for Alan to wake up. Reason for this is because now that the Noah have revealed themselves, everyone needs to have a proper meeting. And Robbie, obviously, is going to be a part of that. As for Maria, well, the town is finally moving forward again, and she can finally leave. And not just that, but she is now a member of the Black Order as an exorcist. And the most recent image of her, she's full of life. Looks good. That darkness and loneliness that she's been living with her entire life, thanks to Alan and Lena Lee, she finally was able to overcome it. And now she's ready for her next step, to become an exorcist. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more D. Gray Man and other things. Thank you, and have a great day.